Alone, vulnerable, and at the mercy of the sheriff's injustices, she lived each day as if walking across a minefield. One afternoon, when he completely lost control and lunged at her, it seemed as though everything was lost. That was when a solitary farmer appeared out of nowhere. Steady, silent, and determined, he placed himself between her and the danger, instantly transforming the fate that had seemed irreversible. Her life would never be the same again. Catherine had always been known in the village for her serene beauty, that natural grace that could make anyone stop and admire her. Her brown hair fell in soft waves over her shoulders, and her green eyes reflected the purity and kindness of her heart. She was a happy woman, fulfilled, married to Henry, a caring and hard-working man. Together, they shared simple dreams, a cozy home, visits to friends in the village, lazy afternoons beneath the shade of trees, and the hope that one day they would have children to fill their home with laughter. But Catherine's happiness was ripped away abruptly and cruelly. Henry died under suspicious circumstances, and no one in the village truly believed it had been just an accident. He worked for the sheriff, tending to maintenance around his house and small tasks no one else had the patience to do. Some said he had uncovered something he shouldn't have. Others whispered that the sheriff himself might bear some responsibility. But nothing was ever proven. The entire village was shaken by the news, and Catherine, once so full of life, watched her world collapse. From that day on, everything changed. The woman who once walked confidently through the village streets now hid behind shawls and modest dresses, avoiding glances and whispers. The neighbors, once her friends, now looked at her with a mix of pity and malicious curiosity. Poor Catherine, widowed so young, no children, no one to take care of her, they murmured, eyes glistening, hands wringing. Each comment, though disguised as empathy, cut her like a sharp blade. She felt every word, every sigh of pity, and swallowed it all, weeping alone in the corners of her small house. And then there was the sheriff, a man with an imposing presence, always wearing that air of authority and coldness. He began watching her, approaching her under the guise of offering protection, when in truth he was only trying to exploit her vulnerability. His words carried heavy insinuations. He praised her body, her way of dressing, made remarks about how a woman so beautiful shouldn't have to go through life alone. Catherine listened in silence. She had no one she could trust, and the thought of confronting him alone was terrifying. Every forced smile of his was a reminder of the danger surrounding her, yet she had no choice. She needed to stay strong, to protect herself the only way she knew how, by keeping quiet. The days grew heavier. She walked the streets avoiding eyes, greeting neighbors only with a timid nod. Each encounter with the sheriff was a trial. He would draw close, speak low, make subtle gestures, and Catherine would feel the chill of intimidation run through her. But even in fear, she kept her head high, trying not to show any weakness. Her suffering was not only physical or external, it was emotional. The pain of losing Henry mingled with the silent shame of being watched and desired by a man without scruples. At night, when she shut the windows and extinguished the lamp, Catherine wept alone. She cried for the life that had been stolen, for the husband who would never return, for the future that now seemed dark and empty. Each tear was a stifled scream. Each sigh carried the weight of an injustice no one seemed to notice. She wondered, silently, if life would ever smile at her again. If one day someone real, someone capable of understanding her pain, would appear to help her stand. But for now, she merely existed, suffering in silence, a victim of circumstance and the cruelty of those who should have protected her. Meanwhile, the sheriff kept prowling. His glances grew bolder, his words more suggestive. He tried to intimidate her, to toy with her fears, as though he owned her life. Catherine felt the heat of anger mingled with terror. She wanted to scream, to run, to escape, but there was nowhere to go. Every step outside her door was a test of endurance, every day a silent battle. And so Catherine's life became a cycle of pain and fear. Alone and unprotected, she fought to survive emotionally, while the world around her continued whispering, pointing, judging. The sheriff, in turn, seemed to delight in it, as if her sadness were a source of amusement. Deep inside, Catherine knew she needed help. That someone real had to appear to defend her. But who would come? Who could stand up to the sheriff and ensure her safety? She only sighed, wiped away her tears and forced herself to remain firm, knowing that for now her only weapon was the silent courage she carried in her chest. And it was at that point of despair, in that moment of deep pain, that fate began to stir in an unexpected way. Because even in the smallest of villages, surrounded by watchful eyes, there was someone who would not allow Catherine to go on suffering. Someone whose presence would change her life forever. The sun had barely reached the peak of the sky when Catherine walked toward the village well. The wooden bucket swung in her hand, heavy, but it was part of her routine, perhaps the only thing that still remained in her life since Henry had been taken so suddenly. Every step along the dirt path seemed to echo the emptiness in her chest. The gentle breeze did nothing to calm her racing heart, and the sounds of the village, once comforting, now only reinforced her sense of isolation. She bent down to draw water from the well, the physical effort helping to distract her mind, when she heard the creak of boots approaching behind her. A shiver ran down her spine. She already knew who it was before hearing the voice. "Good morning, Catherine," said the sheriff, with that icy smile and eyes that hid nothing of his intentions. "Seems you're still all alone, aren't you? No husband, no children, no one to look after you." Catherine took a deep breath, trying not to show the fear that seized her. His presence always brought a deep discomfort, but that day, something different stirred within her. A spark of courage. She lifted her eyes, staring at the man who for weeks had made her feel powerless and vulnerable. "Sheriff," she began, her voice steady though her heart raced, "I am not like the others in this village. I will not stay silent in the face of your provocations. I will not allow you to treat me as you wish anymore." The sheriff's eyes widened, astonished at the woman's audacity. His expression shifted quickly, surprise giving way to furious rage. You dare talk back to me, you insolent woman!" he snarled, his hand darting to the whip he always carried at his belt. The leather hissed in the air as he raised his arm ready to strike. Catherine swallowed hard. Her heart nearly stopped. She felt the rush of air as the whip sliced through the air, and for a moment, everything seemed to spin around her. But then, at the very instant the whip was about to strike her skin, a strong hand seized the sheriff's arm, stopping it cold. "Let her go!" commanded a deep, authoritative voice. The sheriff spun around, startled, and found himself face to face with a tall man, his expression firm and unyielding. His eyes, intense and piercing, could make anyone falter. He was the farmer from the village, known for his coldness and determination, a man few dared to challenge. His gaze alone carried a power that needed no words. "What do you think you're doing?" the farmer continued, his voice low but cutting. "She doesn't need your filthy games." The sheriff's eyes widened as he stepped back, but almost immediately his shock gave way to blazing hatred. "You think you can stop me, you insolent fool?" he snarled, shoving the farmer hard. "You don't know who you're dealing with. I run this village." The farmer did not back down. His eyes locked onto the sheriff's, showing clearly that he would not be intimidated. "No one rules over her," he said firmly, "and no one will prey on her as long as I'm here." The sheriff ground his teeth and lunged, but the farmer caught his arm with iron strength, blocking the blow. Catherine, still trembling, could feel the danger in the air. The clash was not just physical, it was a duel of wills. The sheriff sought to prove his power, but the farmer was determined to protect the defenseless woman. "If you dare touch her again," the farmer warned, his voice low and threatening, "you'll regret it." The sheriff stepped back, his rage boiling into seething resentment. He hissed one last threat. "This isn't over. You'll regret interfering, farmer. I'll see to your end." The farmer stood his ground, his eyes like blades, radiating a silent and unshakable strength. Catherine, still shaken, felt a wave of relief and trust wash over her. For the first time since Henry's death, she felt that someone was willing to fight for her. Without another word, the farmer turned to her. "Get on the horse," he said, helping her gently. "I'll take you somewhere safe." She obeyed, trembling. but enveloped by the sense of protection he gave. He mounted behind her, his arm circling her waist, holding her steady and secure. The ride to the farm was silent, broken only by Catherine's sobs. Each tear carried the fear, sorrow, and tension that had built up for weeks. When they arrived at the farm, he helped her down and led her inside. Catherine sank to the floor, still weeping, and the farmer sat beside her unhurried, offering nothing but his presence and his strength. Catherine sat on the floor of the room, her body hunched, shoulders shaking, as tears streamed uncontrollably down her face. Every sob was a painful reminder of the life she had lost, of the crushing loneliness, of the constant fear of the sheriff. She couldn't speak. She could only cry, as though all the weight of weeks, perhaps months, had been unleashed at once. The farmer moved closer, observing every gesture, every sign of her suffering. Without a word, he knelt beside her and extended his hand, gently holding Catherine's trembling arm. "Shh," he murmured, his voice low and steady, yet carrying warmth. "It's all right. You're safe now." She shook her head, unable to reply. Her sobs seemed to steal all the air from her lungs, but he didn't press her. He simply remained there, a solid, comforting presence. Then carefully, he slipped his arm around her shoulders and drew her against his chest. The firm, protective embrace spoke more reassurance than any words could. Catherine felt her body relax, if only for a moment, and leaned against him, letting her weakness and her pain pour out in sobs. She began to speak, broken by tears, letting out all she had held inside. The loss of Henry, the constant fear of the sheriff, the loneliness of the village, the crushing helplessness in the face of a cruel world. I don't know what to do anymore," she murmured, her voice fractured by sobs. "It feels like no one can protect me, like everything is lost." The farmer's arm tightened slightly around her, a shield of strength. His hand brushed through her hair tenderly, and he rested his face against her head, feeling each trembling breath, each tear that fell. "Shh," he repeated, firm but gentle. "I'm here. I won't let anyone hurt you. No one. I promise I'll take care of you." Catherine drew in a long, deep breath, letting his words sink into her like balm upon her wounds. For the first time since Henry's death, she felt that someone was genuinely willing to protect her. Someone who would not exploit her fragility, but who would remain by her side, steady and true. She kept crying, but now something was different. A sense of relief and hope beginning to stir in her chest. Each sob felt lighter, as though by sharing her pain, part of it was finally being lifted away. "And she began, her voice still trembling. "I never thought anyone would truly care." The farmer's arm tightened once more around her, firm and resolute, conveying strength and commitment. "I care," he said, meeting her tear-filled eyes. "You're not alone, Catherine. I'll protect you, always." She nestled closer against him, finally feeling safe, allowing that promise to wrap around her like a mantle of protection. For a long moment, silence spoke louder than any words could, the sound of his heartbeat, the sense of safety, and the certainty that from that day on, her life would begin to change. After calming her in his arms, the farmer carefully helped Catherine to her feet. "Come, I'll take you to a room," he said, his voice firm yet still filled with gentleness. She walked behind him, still carrying the weight of tears and exhaustion. The room was simple, but clean and welcoming, with a sturdy wooden bed, soft blankets, and a window that let in the gentle light of late afternoon. He pulled out a chair for her to sit while he prepared a warm soup in the kitchen. The aroma of freshly made broth spread through the air, blending with the scent of the wooden house, bringing comfort and reassurance. When the soup was ready, he brought it to the room, setting the bowl before her with care. Catherine took the spoon almost automatically, feeling the warmth and tasting the simple flavor that in that moment felt like a luxury. She ate slowly, each mouthful easing the tension in her body. Then he helped her lie down, covered her with the blanket, and made sure she was comfortable. "Sleep well," he said with a slight nod. "Tomorrow will be another day." Catherine closed her eyes, surrendering to her weariness. For the first time in weeks, she felt she could rest without fear. And in that simple room, beside the man who had promised to protect her, she slept, letting sleep carry away the pain and fear. even if only for a few hours. The next morning, Catherine awoke to the soft light filtering through the window. The scent of fresh coffee and warm bread filled the room, inviting her to rise. She sat up slowly, her body heavy with emotion and interrupted sleep. As she came downstairs, she found the table set with a simple but carefully prepared breakfast: bread, butter, steaming coffee, and seasonal fruit. While she drank her coffee, she heard in the distance the steady sound of hammering echoing across the farm. Curious and eager for a distraction, she set the cup aside and followed the sound to the barn door. There was Alex, wearing an apron, hammering wood with concentration and strength. Each strike of the hammer reflected dedication and care for the property, but also an intensity Catherine was beginning to notice in his very nature. "Did you sleep well?" Alex asked, not pausing his work, turning just enough to glance at her. "Yes," Catherine replied, a timid smile tugging at her lips. "Thank you." She drew in a breath, watching him work, noticing every gesture, every detail, the sweat on his brow, the tension in his muscles, the determination in his gaze. She felt a pang of admiration and strangely comfort. "You know, the sheriff," she began, her smile faltering slightly. "He might come." Alex paused for a moment, the hammer suspended, and looked at her. "I know," Catherine continued with unexpected firmness, "but I'm not afraid of him." He arched a brow, surprised by her courage, and a faint smile crossed his face. "And what's your name?" she asked, seeking to create a more personal connection. "Alex," he replied slowly, each syllable carrying weight. "Catherine," she said, offering her name with a slight nod. From that moment on, something shifted for good. Catherine was no longer just a guest or a woman in danger. She became part of Alex's daily life in a natural, almost inevitable way. Each morning, each meal, each task he included her in made her feel more integrated, as if she had finally found a place where she belonged. She helped with small chores, tasks that seemed simple but required attention and care, feeding the animals, gathering firewood, sweeping the barn, organizing tools, and tending the garden. Alex observed each movement, each gesture, and couldn't help but admire the strength and courage Catherine carried silently. He saw how she faced every task with determination, even when weariness or the pain of loss still lingered in her eyes. She was fragile, yes, but also incredibly resilient. Alex didn't need words to show he cared for her. His every act spoke louder than any speech. When he handed her a tool, he watched closely to make sure she was safe. When he noticed she was straining, he would step in quietly, adjusting her posture or offering physical support with a discreet gesture. When he saw her hesitate before a task, his patience was evident, allowing her to learn at her own pace. Everything about him conveyed protection, trust, and attentiveness, without the need for explanation. Catherine, in turn, was beginning to feel at ease in that silent care. There was safety in his smallest gestures. The way he held a rope, the way he opened a gate, the way he adjusted a horse's saddle. Every movement displayed competence, strength, and above all, the intent to keep her safe. She marveled at how easily she could trust him, even while still feeling vulnerable. The days fell into a steady rhythm, the sun rising and warming the farm, the sound of hammers and tools echoing in the barn, pauses for simple meals, and light conversations between them. There were shy laughs when something went wrong, fleeting glances that lasted only an instant but conveyed more than words ever could. Each of Alex's gestures showed that he wasn't just tending to the farm, he was tending to her, watching every detail of her well-being, anticipating her needs before she even noticed them herself. That routine also strengthened Catherine's courage. The fear of the sheriff, once constant and overwhelming, began to lose its grip in the certainty that Alex was always near. Knowing there was someone willing to protect her, someone so attentive to her every gesture, allowed Catherine to face each day with more determination and confidence. She began to realize her life didn't have to be defined only by grief and fear. Even in the quiet moments, standing beside Alex as he worked or tended the farm, she felt a comforting warmth in her chest. It was the feeling of belonging, of being seen and valued for who she truly was, a strong, courageous woman worthy of protection. Little by little, the trust between them grew. Alex's presence became an anchor for Catherine, giving her strength to rebuild her life, even in simple ways, piecing back together the fragments of her broken world. Each gesture, each glance, each shared moment forged a silent, profound bond, made of protection, respect, and mutual care. Catherine then understood that she no longer had to feel alone. Life may have lost its colors with Henry's death, but here, beside Alex, lay the possibility of a new beginning. And as she helped with small farm tasks, watching his careful movements, she felt within her a growing blend of gratitude, hope, and something deeper, difficult to name, but warming her heart with each passing day. That night, the kitchen was bathed in moonlight streaming through the windows, and the scent of freshly cooked food filled the air. Alex was focused, stirring the pot, when Catherine entered quietly, feeling the warmth of the room and the nearness of the man before her. She watched him for a moment, noting the open shirt, the firm muscles revealed, the sheen of sweat from the day's labor on the farm, and his dark hair still damp from a recent wash. Something in that sight left her both nervous and fascinated. "Smells wonderful," she said, trying to keep her voice steady, though feeling the heat rise to her cheeks. Alex glanced over his shoulder, offering a faint smile, and nodded. "Can I help you?" she asked, her tone shy yet determined. Alex answered, "Of course." Everything felt just right in that kitchen. Alex and Catherine moved side by side, each focused on their own task, yet fully aware of the other's presence. The heat rising from the pot, the aroma of spices, and the soft sounds of cooking blended together to create an unexpected sense of intimacy. There was a quiet harmony in the air. They were cooking together, and even without words, they felt connected. Catherine picked up a knife and began slicing vegetables on the wooden board. Each movement was careful and deliberate, but the mix of nervousness and excitement made her hands tremble slightly. Alex watched her closely, never interfering, but always alert, making sure she was safe and at ease. Then suddenly, a small accident. "Ouch!" Catherine gasped, bringing her hand to her finger, a faint sting pulsing through the cut. Alex immediately stepped closer, his face etched with genuine concern. "What happened?" he asked, his voice steady but threaded with care. "I cut myself, but it's nothing," she replied, trying to downplay the pain, though the faint tremor in her hands betrayed her. "Let me see," Alex said, moving closer still. His eyes met hers, and for an instant the world seemed to shrink to the space between them. With gentle precision, he took her hand, examined the wound, cleaned it carefully, dabbed it with alcohol, and placed a small bandage over the cut. They lingered there, eye to eye, the closeness charging the air with a silent, powerful tension. Catherine felt her heartbeat quicken, each thud reminding her of the strength and protection he embodied. Alex, meanwhile, found it impossible to look away, captivated by both her courage and the fragile vulnerability revealed in that moment. For a fleeting second, it felt like anything could happen. A touch, a deeper embrace, perhaps even a kiss. But then the piercing whistle of the pressure cooker cut through the air, breaking the moment with startling abruptness. Both stepped back, laughing nervously, relieved by the sudden interruption. "I think our meal is ready," Alex said with a faint smile, attempting to smooth over the intensity of what had just passed. Catherine blushed, a soft laugh slipping from her lips. With a small gesture, she offered, "Can I help set the table?" "Of course," he replied, stepping forward to hand her some plates with quiet care. Together they moved to the table, the atmosphere lighter now but still threaded with subtle glances and gentle gestures. They sat side by side, speaking softly about the farm, about small tasks and the day's simple events. Every word was paired with shy smiles and lingering looks that spoke volumes more than any conversation could. Even without open declarations of affection, each unspoken gesture deepened the intimacy between them. Catherine felt safe, even as a quiet, undeniable attraction stirred within her. Alex felt it too, that charged tension, but both seemed to understand that the moment to give in hadn't quite arrived. The meal, simple yet lovingly prepared, became a space of ease and closeness. Between the light conversation, shared laughter and fleeting glances, Catherine realized that here, beside Alex, something new was unfolding. A sense of belonging and tender care began to root itself in her heart, making her feel alive again, with a gentle hope that maybe, at last, she had found someone she could truly trust. Several days passed since Catherine had begun to weave herself into the rhythm of the farm. Each morning, each task, each shared meal cemented a quiet intimacy between her and Alex. They didn't need words to express their growing affection. Subtle touches, lingering looks, shy laughter, and small acts of kindness were enough. In that simple rural space, every gesture spoke louder than conversation, and with each passing moment, their hearts drew closer. Catherine found herself gradually less fragile, more alive, while Alex discovered in her both a strength that impressed him and a gentleness that pulled him in with irresistible force. That afternoon, Alex was out in the fields, working through heavy chores, chopping wood, mending fences, shifting tools with steady concentration and strength. Catherine, meanwhile, had chosen to sweep out the barn, clearing away scattered straw and small bits of debris left behind by the animals. She was so absorbed in her work that she didn't notice his approach until the sound of firm footsteps echoed just behind her. "Catherine!" Alex's voice carried over, steady, but tinged with something that made her shiver. Startled by his sudden nearness, she tried to step back, only to slip on a damp patch of floor. In a flash, Alex caught her before she could fall, pulling her into his arms. The shock dissolved instantly into a warmth that flooded her, her heartbeat racing wildly at the closeness. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice firm yet softened, as if every word had been carefully chosen to calm her. Yes, I just slipped," she murmured, struggling to steady her breath while acutely aware of the heat of his body pressed to hers. He held her securely, making certain she was safe, and then their eyes met. In that gaze, intense, protective, and brimming with something unspoken, the rest of the world seemed to fade away. A shiver ran through Catherine, and she realized that all the tension of the past days had found its center here, in this very instant. I've wanted to do this for a long time," Alex said, his voice husky, almost a whisper, before leaning in and brushing his lips against hers. The kiss began tender, but carried with it all the pent-up tension, all the expectation, all the silent intensity that had been building between them. Catherine felt herself surrendering, cautiously but completely, drawing strength and warmth from his embrace. Every heartbeat stretched into forever. The outside world vanished, leaving only the two of them, breathing, feeling, discovering. Everything changed in that moment. Catherine felt alive, desired, and protected, as if every fear, every insecurity had been swept away by that single touch. Alex, in turn, realized that his heart, locked away for so long by loss and pain, had finally found shelter, comfort, and hope in that unexpected kiss, so intense and charged with emotion. When they pulled apart, still breathless, their eyes remained fixed on each other. A timid smile curved on Catherine's lips, while Alex held her hands firmly, but gently, as though to say, "I'm here, and I always will be." The silent connection between them grew stronger, deeper, and in that moment they both knew something essential in their lives had changed, something neither of them ever wanted to lose again. Later that same night, Catherine couldn't fall asleep. The high moon lit the porch, and the starry sky seemed to embrace the farm with an almost magical calm. Wrapped in the blanket Alex had given her, she sat gazing at the stars, lost in thought, replaying everything that had happened in the past few days. The fright with the sheriff, Alex's protection, the silent glances, and now the kiss that still sent her heart racing. Suddenly, the sound of soft footsteps on the grass drew her attention. Alex appeared, carrying a steaming mug of tea. The warmth rose in the cool night air, and the comforting aroma seemed to wrap around the yard. "Catherine," he said, his voice low and calm, not wanting to disturb the peace of the moment. "I brought some tea. I thought it might help." She looked at him, surprised but grateful. Taking the mug in both hands, she felt the warmth seep into her skin as he settled beside her, leaning lightly against the wooden post. "You can't sleep either?" she asked, trying to mask the worry and curiosity in her tone. Alex let out a quiet sigh, his eyes still fixed on the stars. "No," he admitted, his voice heavy with honesty and fatigue. I can't sleep." A profound silence followed, broken only by the soft sounds of the night, the wind through the trees, the cricket's steady song, the faint rustling of animals in the distance. Catherine felt a mixture of calm and anxiety, an urge to open up, to share what was stirring inside her, though she couldn't quite find the words. Sensing her hesitation, Alex took the initiative, his voice weighted with memory and emotion. "You know," he began, drawing in a deep breath, "when I was very young, I lost everyone I loved. My parents died in a fire, and it was my fault. I couldn't save them. I was left completely alone, had to work hard from an early age, and with the little money I managed to save, I bought this farm. But," he paused, his eyes locking with hers, his expression etched with pain, "it scarred me deeply." A wave of sadness and compassion washed over Catherine. This strong, protective man who seemed invincible to the world carried wounds that few had ever seen. She moved closer, carefully taking his hand, threading her fingers through his, offering silent warmth as if to say, "I'm here. You're not alone." Alex looked at her, feeling the tenderness and understanding reflected in her gaze. The weight of the night, of the memories and the pain, seemed to lift with that gentle touch. With a pull that felt inevitable, he leaned forward and kissed her again. This time the kiss was deeper, more intense, charged with emotion, with pent-up sorrow and release. Catherine answered with equal intensity, realizing she could finally surrender to the trust and protection of the man who had become her safe harbor. Their breathing grew heavier, yet there was no urgency. Every touch, every movement was laden with care. Catherine felt her heart open in a way it hadn't in a long time. Alex felt his chest warm with a sense of closeness and companionship he had never known before. The night moved on slowly, and beneath the gentle light of the stars, they stayed together, speaking softly, their words punctuated by smiles, subtle touches, and lingering looks that said more than language ever could. From time to time, Catherine rested her head on his shoulder, soaking in the safety and warmth of his body, while Alex caressed her hand with tender patience, as though that touch alone could heal the pain they both carried. For the first time, they allowed themselves to feel without fear, to love without restraint, to trust completely. Every kiss, every word, every silent gesture seemed to unravel the scars of the past and build something new, solid and true. Catherine realized that with him, she could finally find peace and affection. Alex realized that with her, he could start believing again. In love, in mutual protection, and in the hope of better days. Time seemed to stand still on that porch. The soft night breeze teased her hair, mingling with the scent of wood and earth from the farm. And there, beneath the stars, they knew something profound had begun, something that would forever change their lives. The morning sun poured over the farm, spreading golden tones across the fields and the fruit-laden trees. Catherine decided to use the early hours to pick some fruit from the orchard. The sweet fragrance of ripe apples and the bird song filled the air with tranquility, and for a fleeting moment, she almost forgot everything that had happened in the past few days. Alone, she wandered between the trees, stretching to reach the higher branches. The gentle warmth of the sun mixed with the cool breeze, and Catherine felt an uncommon peace. But that sense of safety didn't last. The heavy sound of approaching footsteps made her freeze. Before she could react, a shadow emerged from behind a tree. It was the sheriff. His dark gaze and cruel smile betrayed his malicious intent. Well, what do we have here?" he drawled, moving closer, every word dripping with menace. "Don't scream, or you'll regret it." Catherine's heart raced. Fear shot down her spine, but even as dread gripped her, she held firm, forcing her voice steady. "I have nothing to say to you." "Oh, but I've got plenty of ideas of what to do with you," he muttered, stepping closer, reaching to seize her by the arm. On the other side of the ranch, Alex was working on building a new fence. When he noticed Catherine had disappeared from the field where he had left her, his instincts immediately warned him that something was wrong. Dropping the hammer, he sprinted toward the orchard, his heart pounding, fearing the worst. As he drew closer, the sight before his eyes made his blood boil. The sheriff was far too close to Catherine, his sinister grin betraying dangerous intentions. Without a second thought, Alex charged forward, rage surging through every movement. "Stay away from her now!" Alex roared, his voice cutting through the air like thunder. The sheriff turned slowly, his eyes narrowing with hatred, the cruel smile fading and replaced by a look of challenge. Their stares collided instantly, determination against fury, fear against courage. Before either of them could exchange another word, the sheriff lunged, trying to seize Catherine's arm in a brutal grip. She screamed, but Alex was faster. In a swift motion, he grabbed the sheriff's shoulder and shoved him back with all the force in his body. The impact sent the man staggering several steps, but he wasn't done. He came charging again, fists swinging wildly, aiming at Alex. The physical clash was brutal. Alex blocked each punch, dodging, countering with shoves, grappling the sheriff with iron strength, determined to keep him from ever reaching Catherine. The orchard echoed with the sounds of their struggle. Shouts, boots grinding into the dirt, branches snapping. Catherine stumbled back, tripping over fallen limbs and rough ground, but Alex was always there between her and the threat, unyielding, a wall of protection. "You'll never lay a hand on her again," Alex bellowed, slamming the sheriff against a tree. The force of the blow made the man reel, but he dragged himself up once more, furious, spitting out curses and threats. The fight grew fiercer, every punch, every kick, every shove fueled by raw fury and desperation. Alex could feel adrenaline surging through his veins, every muscle taut, ready to do whatever it took to shield Catherine. The sheriff, once arrogant and sure of himself, began to buckle under the relentless strength and unshakable resolve of his opponent. With a sudden, decisive move, Alex seized the sheriff by the shoulders, twisted, and hurled him to the ground with bone-jarring force. The crash sent branches tumbling and dust billowing through the orchard. The man tried to rise again, but Alex pinned him down firmly, locking his arms, his eyes blazing with wrath and fierce protection. Catherine, still trembling and breathless, stepped closer, but Alex held her behind him, shielding her with his body. She could feel his strength, the safety radiating from him in every gesture. At last, the sheriff faltered, realizing he had no chance against Alex's fury and surrendering to defeat. Drawing in deep breaths, his heart still racing, Alex finally turned to Catherine. His eyes, brimming with concern and tenderness, found hers. He gripped her shoulders gently, brushing away the remnants of fear. "It's all right. You're safe now," he said, his voice steady but laden with profound affection. Catherine couldn't hold back her tears. She collapsed against him, sobbing in relief, feeling as though the nightmare had finally ended. He wrapped her in a protective embrace, and in that moment nothing else mattered, only the unshakable certainty that he would never let her face danger alone again. In the days that followed the orchard confrontation, word of the sheriff's arrest spread quickly throughout the village. People whispered in tones of shock and relief about his crimes and abuse of power. They weren't just isolated threats. Many widows had suffered his cruelty, enduring years of fear and silent oppression. His name was now forever tainted, and the law had at last demanded his punishment. When Catherine heard the neighbors' accounts, a wave of relief washed over her, lifting an invisible weight she had carried since the day the sheriff first appeared in the orchard. She could finally breathe again. The man who had haunted her with menace, who had been a constant danger, could no longer touch her. Every gesture from Alex in the days that followed only deepened that sense of safety. He didn't need to make grand declarations. His steady presence was enough. The watchful glance whenever there was a hint of suspicion. The way he always kept Catherine close if there was the slightest sign of risk. Even his smallest touches. An arm resting lightly across her back, a quick squeeze of her hand, the brush of his shoulder against hers as they crossed the yard, conveyed one unshakable message. "I'm here. Nothing will happen to you." The bond between them grew stronger in a quiet yet irreversible way. The fear of the past gave way to trust in the present, and every shared moment carried greater intensity, forged in the fire of the ordeal they had faced together. Alex saw clearly now the courage and strength within Catherine, not the frightened woman he had first met, but someone who, though shaken, faced life with resilience and dignity. Catherine, in turn, felt more connected to him than she had ever thought possible. Every glance held a depth of intimacy, Every shared smile carried a silent promise that grew more profound with each passing day. One golden afternoon, with the sun bathing the ranch in warm light, Alex asked Catherine to walk with him to the orchard, where the branches, heavy with fruit, shimmered in the glow of daylight. She walked by his side, her heart racing, wrapped in that strange but comforting peace that only his presence could give. When they reached a secluded spot, where old trees formed a small grove within the orchard, Alex stopped and turned to her. The wind stirred her hair gently, and their eyes met, reflecting the intensity of the hardships they had endured, the dangers they had faced, and the moments they had shared. "Catherine," he began, his voice steady yet brimming with emotion he could barely contain, "you've changed my life. From the moment I found you, I knew I had to protect you, not just from danger, but from anything that could ever hurt you. You've shown me courage, strength, and a love I thought I'd never be able to feel again." She stood silent, her heart pounding, tears threatening to fall. Alex drew in a deep breath, then sank to one knee before her, holding her hands with a tenderness that was matched by unwavering strength. "Catherine, I want to spend every day of my life by your side. I want to be your shelter, your strength, your home. Will you marry me?" he asked, his eyes locked on hers, every word soaked in sincerity, longing, and hope. Tears finally spilled down Catherine's cheeks, but they were tears of joy and release. She felt every emotion of the past days, fear, sorrow, pain, but also love and protection burst within her heart. With a trembling smile, she cradled his face in her hands and answered, "Yes, Alex, yes, I accept." He smiled, relieved and deeply moved, pulling her close into a tight embrace. The world seemed to vanish around them, leaving only the two of them, bathed in golden sunlight, with the certainty that from that moment on, nothing could ever tear them apart. After that proposal in the orchard, Alex and Catherine's lives changed forever. They were married in a simple yet profoundly meaningful ceremony, surrounded by the beauty of the farm, the colors of the sunset, and the affection of the few neighbors who truly knew them. There was no luxury, no crowd, yet every detail reflected the purity of the love that bound them together. Catherine, wearing the plain white dress Alex had helped her choose, felt happier than she had ever imagined possible, while he, holding her hands during their vows, seemed to have finally found the peace he had long been searching for. The months that followed were spent building a harmonious routine filled with companionship. Every sunrise was celebrated side by side. Alex took care of the animals, the land, and the heavier work, while Catherine dedicated herself to lighter chores, keeping the house and the farm in order, gradually learning more and more about rural life. Their glances, their discreet gestures of care, their gentle touches and silent smiles, all deepened the intimacy growing between them, making each day more special than the last. A year later, the joy that already filled the farm grew even greater. Catherine was pregnant, and the couple eagerly awaited the arrival of their first child. Every movement she made, every shy smile, and every hand resting on her belly was watched with tenderness and fascination by Alex. He spoke to the baby even before it was born, telling stories about the farm, making promises of eternal love and protection. Catherine felt complete, protected, and entirely cherished. When at last their child was born, a healthy baby with bright eyes and dark hair like Alex's, happiness filled the entire home. Catherine cradled the newborn in her arms, her heart overflowing with love, while Alex knelt beside her, kissing his son's forehead and whispering vows of protection, affection, and a life filled with joy. Every tear shed in that moment was a tear of gratitude, for the past they had overcome, for the love they had built, and for the future opening before them. The farm, which once symbolized nothing more than safety and hard work, had now become the home of a complete family. Every corner of the house, every tree in the orchard, every stretch of field seemed to carry the energy of the love that had been built with patience, courage, and unity. Alex and Catherine knew that together they could face any challenge, and the tiny baby resting in his mother's arms was living proof of the unbreakable bond they had forged. The nights spent on the porch, gazing at the stars as they used to, now carried a new meaning. Catherine leaned her head against Alex's shoulder, their child asleep in her arms, and felt that nothing in the world could ever threaten their happiness. Fear, the dark past, and the sheriff's threats had become distant memories, while a new life, one of love, care, and deep companionship, was blossoming before them. And so, Alex and Catherine, united by love, courage, and the experiences that had shaped them, began a life of fullness, showing that even after times of danger and pain, it is possible to find peace, happiness, and to build a family where true love reigns supreme.